and Rick from Beverly Hills. Awesome. Well, I am going to give this a start, everybody. Thank you all for being here. My name is Debe Arlook. I'll be your host and co-host as you will be meeting Granville a little bit further. I'm going to tell you more about him. So welcome to Pasadena Photography Arts Open Show number 39. We are Open Show Pasadena, East LA, and we really appreciate you being here. We know you could be anywhere. We're winding down summer, and we know that people have been out of town, traveling, so it is hard even to get to Zoom these days. So we really appreciate you being here. Before we do begin, though, I would like to recognize the Tongva and Chumash, who are the native people of this land that we call Los Angeles. Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate. Let's support each other for who we are. Our support and love goes out to all who continue to suffer from COVID-19, the variants, natural disasters, and political strife. If you've been with us before, thank you for your support. And if this is your first Open Show, welcome. Open Show is an international platform that provides emerging and established artists an opportunity to present and discuss projects to a live audience. We have calls for submissions every other month, so please follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to stay updated. We're Pasadena Photography Arts, an emerged project under the Fulcrum Arts. We are a not-for-profit, volunteer-based organization. We would like to thank this month's underwriter, Douglas McCullough, and Pasadena Arts League for sponsoring the event. An organization or individual can sponsor us or can sponsor our shows, and the magic number to see your name right here is $250. We have two programs, Open Show, like this evening, and Forum, where we invite established art professionals to share their knowledge and experiences to the community. I want to thank those who have donated for this show. And you've done that, if you've done that already when you RSVP'd, and you can still do that now and possibly get one of these fantastic prints from our artists, who thank you very much for donating. Your support is significant, and just know that we really appreciate you. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Pasadena Photography Arts YouTube page in about a week. And announcing our Forum October 26th event, Exploring What's Possible, Part 1. I'm really, really excited about this one. I've been thinking about it for years. I'll be moderating a discussion with leading artists, and Kay Ito is one of our artists. We'll be doing Part 2 with Kay in sometime next year, hopefully January. We're going to be diving into the deeper why an artist makes a project, selecting the medium to best communicate that project, and how to explore installation possibilities to communicate to their audience. It's an opportunity to learn about going beyond the norm of project making. You can RSVP through the link in the chat. And now let's begin the show. I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, co-curator and host tonight, Granville Carroll. He is an Arizona State University educator and an Afrofuturist photographer. He's currently based in Rochester, New York. He was our Open Show feature artist this past March, and he inspired me so much that we've continued and developed a friendship, and he blows me away. He's pretty amazing. He's my son's age, and I call him my friend, and I love that. I say what is so cool, you know, how he worked with us in Pasadena. I mean, as a presenter, featured artist. This is our mission with PPA. It's to develop community and support artist careers. So remember Granville's name, because he's making a beautiful mark in the photo world. We're going to start the show with work from our youngest featured artist. And so I'm going to start with a silent viewing of Abigail Teodori's project called In Passing. I just want to introduce Abby. Abby is a Filipino artist based in Chicago, currently studying for her BFA at the School of Fine Art Institute of Chicago. She works primarily with photo, poetry, and installation to create works in response to her journey through self-discovery, weaving images with words, timestamps, and illustrations until reaching a knot she wants to unravel. Her interest lies in unearthing what is lost today and the constant push onward. Abby, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction. When I began working on this project, I was responding to my struggles and frustrations with depression and confusion of identity. All of my thoughts seemed elusive and I couldn't grasp what was pulling me down. I felt this constant itch to escape and my mind felt overwhelmed constantly. So in response, I found myself being pulled into reverie whenever it became too much. It was a very difficult time for me. So I used this project as a meditative process to help me through it. Time is an important aspect to my image making because of this. I made sure that through utilizing long exposures, rephotographing, and extensive journal responses, I could use that time to find peace and understanding. One important aspect I realized was that I could not find answers in one go. Complete healing and understanding would not be the product of this process. Instead, revelations were found at the oddest of times, never announced, always in passing. So when I began this project, I was thinking a lot about light and its place in my life as a symbol for hope and its power to heal. There's a hopeful brilliance to it that I found myself chasing, and it was what was pulling me forward as I struggled. As I captured photographs, I realized I was recording light. And similarly to the translation that happens when the light hits the sensor of the camera, I take the light I capture to make sense of my place in the world. So thinking a lot about photography's power to heal. While I was working on this project, this quote by Dwayne Michaels really lingered in my mind. He said, "I use photography to help me explain my experiences to myself. I believe in the imagination. What I cannot see is infinitely more important than what I can see." So while working on these images, I was considering the idea that they aren't necessarily true depictions of a lived moment. For example, unlike in street photography, where you might snap a photo as you pass by, I set up many of these images. For example, if we could please go to the image of the eye peering into the room and the ghostly figure on the bed. I set that up.
Did I pass that one? I just want to make sure.
I think you might have.
Let's see. No, I hadn't gotten to it yet.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, all right. All right, we're going to move to that and then we'll come back.
Okay, great. So I didn't stumble across that scene candidly. Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, I didn't stumble across that scene candidly. Instead, I see these as encapsulations of memory or an experience, especially in the cases of the physically manipulated photos like this one, or the ones with the dots of light sprinkled throughout it. I see these marks as a sort of lexicon, a language of my own that I've developed to respond to my images. Additionally, the line between fact and fiction are blurred as time and space are confused. Throughout my creation of the images, I used a range of exposure times. In some cases, long exposures are barely noticeable, and sometimes they're obvious. Once the images are rephotographed, they seem to be removed from the time they were taken in altogether. This was important to me in order to reflect how time felt stretched and pushed, condensed, but drawn out. There's a constant search for peace and for settled concentration. In chasing the light, I hoped to gain a piece of it through a photograph. And through that, I hoped to gain a place of peace and somewhere to reflect in. Also through rephotographing the images like the one with the eye and the ghostly figure, space is confused. Where at the forefront, there's this image of this three-dimensional room. If you keep looking at it, you realize that through the tear in the inkjet print, you're actually looking at a two-dimensional object. This confused dimensionality of the scene, of the scene seems to draw you out away from a recognizable space, further removing you from reality.
Thank you, Abby. Granville, I'd like to hear your, was Granville's, we discussed together this between fact and fiction. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then where you wanted to go, and about why we chose Abby?
Absolutely. So currently I'm working on designing a class around the ideas of representation. So when Debbie asked me to co-curate, I thought, well, what better way to explore the ideas of representation than through this call for entry? And so in my own work, I'm always playing with the ideas of what is fact and what's fiction, and sort of blurring the lines and stretching the fabric of reality. And I was interested in seeing how other people also did that in their own work, in their practice. So specifically, looking at Abby's work, it was just really amazing to see this sort of really internal world, that's being expressed outwardly, the way that she is manipulating the image with, the basic ideas of what photography is, right? Just light, shadow, light and shadow bringing forth form, and allowing us to sort of see something that otherwise wouldn't exist otherwise. So between fact and fiction, I think when we think about representation, oftentimes we're thinking about the social identity, things of that sort, which are very important topics to discuss. But I also wanted to see, like how people might relate to the way that they represent their worlds, whether that's internal, that's external, or a blending of the two.
I have a question, Abby.
Yeah.
Abby, as a photographer who has processed emotions through my work, did you feel like making this work helped you process your feelings?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I feel like this way of working really showed me the power of articulating one's thoughts. I feel like through looking back, and really my process when I was taking these photos was I just photographed whatever I was drawn to, and then the mark making was my way of making sense of why I was drawn to it. So definitely it was very therapeutic and wonderful, like looking back.
And have you shared them with people, and have they responded in kind? Have they felt what you're trying to, your feelings?
Also, yeah, I feel like definitely I'm surrounded by wonderful people, and also just through this project, it really solidified that in me. Actually, a lot of the portraits in the series that aren't directly of me are of close family members, and it just really, one part of my artist statement on my website, I said, just as we are part of the world is a part of us. So I was thinking a lot about how my relationships influenced who I am. And so it definitely, I feel like the support system that I'm surrounded by really fueled this project as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Abby, in this image in particular, can you tell us a little bit about how, just like to give the audience this idea of how you created this one, like what made you then put this rip and this tear or the dots, and then yourself, with the dot there. Can you just bring us through this image a bit?
Yeah, so I just took the self-portrait and then I printed it, and the dots specifically, I was thinking a lot about where the tension in me and the anxiety in me that I was trying to get across resided, and a lot of that was in my throat. And so I thought of the dots as sort of like breathing holes. And the rip, it was just, I felt like that's what the image wanted me to do. I just felt the impulse to do that.
Yeah.
And then that shadowy figure was just, I was thinking about the duality of myself and like these many versions of myself that I feel like are there that I haven't discovered yet.
I remember you said something about creating a language of your own. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I feel like when I look at these images, I just feel like like when I was looking at them and like making those like edits to them, those physical manipulations, I was responding to what I was seeing. Like, what did I want the situation to say to whoever saw it? And so it's definitely me speaking to the viewer of the image.
Debbie, I have to share one of the comments from Joseph Barkley Ross. Wow,
Yes.
really eerie and sensitive and deep. Igmar Bergman meets The Shining. I mean, that's a very, very wonderful description.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm interested, Abby. So, you speak about sort of this idea of that art is healing. And for you, this was a process to share your journey of anxiety and depression, which is a very vulnerable moment, right? Like you're really putting yourself out there and inviting the viewer into your mind. So how did you find the strength to make the body of work and feel comfortable enough to share that with the world?
Really, it was the way I was raised. My parents are here, the most wonderful people I know. And they've always just grounded me in honesty. And I feel like in regards to mental health issues, it's really important to feel strong and vulnerable enough to say what you're feeling, because that's the only way to move forward. And I really realized that when I began this project, that there was no getting better if I didn't acknowledge what I was going through. And I just hope that this can help anyone else that is going through a similar period in their life where they can't really fully articulate why they're feeling weighed down or just mentally ill, and they feel strong enough to know that there's another person experiencing the same thing. And so there's someone to talk to. And I feel like there's a great strength in that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I want to say just thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, and honest in that regard. And if there are any other questions from people in the audience, we have a couple minutes left, so feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute yourself and speak up. We'd love to hear from y'all.
Joseph, I was also thinking of The Innocents, a subtle horror movie adapted from The Turning of the Screw by Henry James, introspective wells of moody intensity. You might think of doing a horror video with your great eye. Does that interest you, Abby?
Possibly. The funny thing is when I started this, I actually don't really watch any horror films. So I love these references, but I don't know them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so surreal, obviously, and just even obscure, just in terms of how you've tilted the camera a bit, and it really is unsettling in a way. There's which image? Oh, there's that one image of you where it's so subtle. Let me get to it. This one. It took us a moment to see your double exposure here.
It's actually a long exposure.
It's a long exposure.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was surprising. Okay.
Yeah. I use a strobe and I realized that the quality you can give the image because of the imprint of the light.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the way that like sort of the bar by the seat that I'm on sort of like is jointed through my head. And you can barely see me. I don't know. I constantly felt this feeling that I was a ghost of who I was prior to how I was feeling, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, that's where a lot of the ghostly figures come from.
Thank you. I'm going to see if I get my cursor going the right way. And thank you so very much, Abby. We are honored to have you. And as I said, Abby's our youngest featured presenter to date. And we're waiting to see, or excited to see, where you go next.
I have a question for her really quick, please. Sorry.
Yes, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I wanted to ask, because I know you mentioned that like a lot of the photos were from like either past experiences or memories. And a lot of it was like figuring out why you were drawn to those certain memories or experiences. But I was wondering, like, if through this whole thing, like what you found out from that, like why you were drawn to them.
I think it drew me back to a lot of folklore and fairy tales I grew up reading. That's why there's a lot of forest imagery, and yeah, and also the relationships I was sort of talking about earlier, just sort of delving back into that and how they've influenced me. Yeah, it definitely influenced the way I thought about my relationships and the environment I grew up in.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate
Thank
you. Thank you very much. Our next featured presenter is Michael Jantzen. Michael joins us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. He lived in California for 20 years. We miss him. He's been working as an experimental artist and designer for over 50 years. He's recognized as a visionary who throughout his career has celebrated sustainability in much of his work. It merges art, architecture, science, technology, and design. Extreme innovation has always been his goal in everything he creates. Most of his innovation has focused on the reinvention of the built environment, sculpture, sustainable design, and photo-based art. Michael's work has been published widely in the media and is exhibited in the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Debbie, is
Yes.
it possible to see these in full screen? Because we're just seeing them up in the corner, very small picture.
Is everyone else seeing that?
It's working for us.
It's working.
It's fine.
Okay. That's my dad. Dad, I'm going to let you figure that one. Thank you. If everyone could mute themselves, please. Michael, welcome. I'd love to hear you talk about this amazing work and how very different it is.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I may not have as much to say about the work as the other people, but first of all, I don't really consider myself a photographer, but rather an image maker. And I like to make images with whatever technique is appropriate, whether it's a camera, a computer, or whatever. But my primary goal is to try and create images that no one has ever seen before. That's my main goal. And my background is primarily 3D oriented. A lot of my work over the years has merged architecture and sculpture. And so I'm very interested in structure. And this particular series obviously explores that whole idea. And I guess the most important thing to talk about is the technique, the way I make these. I actually build either architectural models and or sculptures physically, and I make those usually in a very random way, so they're not preconceived. And I put them together and create hopefully unexpected objects that I then photograph and put those photographs in my computer and isolate them from their original backgrounds. And then I start to play with those images. So what you're seeing in all of these are actual photographs of these physical objects. So I have one I'll show later. And often I'll layer, in this case, for instance, I'll layer the original image multiple times and increase the scale each time. And the whole point is to try to create something I have never seen before and hopefully no one else has seen before. And they often become, these sort of futuristic architectural things and or other kinds of objects. And then along with the theme of between fact and fiction, I'll take those images and I'll isolate those again and place them into different landscapes. And just to point on this, if you go back to the last one quickly, I just wanted to point out those altered people standing there are wearing these kind of strange masks, and those were also made in the same way from objects that I make and then alter them in the computer, and in this case just place them on the people, and sometimes alter the shape of the people and or in some case animals as well. So the whole idea is to create these kind of surreal images, as I said, that hopefully haven't been seen before. And so my whole thing is to try to create what I call a system or method through which these things are created that kind of make they develop on their own, and I just edit and stop them when I want to. So again, I don't like the idea of preconceiving these things. I want them to be surprises to me as well as everyone else. And the reason I'm not really very interested in looking at things that we're familiar with, images of people or animals or whatever, and then altering those. I prefer to create something randomly and then building on that to create again these kind of unexpected things. So that's really the technique and the whole point of these. And I do the same thing with my sculpture and architectural project as well. Again, there I try to create systems that generate these things on their own. And I just become the editor because I'm I mainly do this to entertain myself. And so my entertainment is being surprised and in some case shocked by how these things evolve on their own. And so that's basically what I do. And so I'm not trying to create any message with any of these. I want the images to be there for the viewer to make up their own stories about what these things are, where they came from, what they're doing in these particular landscapes. And the landscapes are important. I try to match the landscape up with the objects and try to, again, build on this surreal effect of what like this one, for instance, what is this mega structure, standing up on these boulders, and there's a little kid off there to the right that you can see. So to try to, again, set up these scenarios where the viewer has the fun of taking the basic image and creating their own stories and ideas about them. So I think there's one coming up that I can talk a little bit more detail about. These are not computer generated objects. They're manipulated in the computer, but they originate from photos of physical things.
So your landscape, those are all images that you've taken with your camera.
Yeah, they're all images. And some case I'll play, in this case, the cow was not in that particular, but I did take a picture of the cow and then isolate the cow and put him in that particular landscape. Again, to create these surreal, unexpected kinds of images. And the same with the panther, which is actually a photo of a model of a panther. But it just seemed to go well with the New Mexico landscape there and these sort of giant mega machines. Okay, this is one I can actually show where it came from. I don't know how much you can see, but this is a wall sculpture, which is pretty evident for. So this was created originally without any preconceived idea of where it was going to go. Just putting often parts of other things I have together and creating these three-dimensional objects. And then in this case, it's pretty evident where it came from. You can see it was photographed and then manipulated to some extent to create the image that you see there. I also photographed the toad, who was a visitor here a couple of years ago. And in this case also, the landscape was manipulated a little bit. It was actually cut in half and then put back together in a symmetrical format. And so was the toad, and the image of the sculpture, whatever was, in this case, everything was put back together in a symmetrical formation.
I'm kind of interested, Michael, and this idea that you talked about, like the images are almost autonomous, beings. You talk about so that they create themselves. And if you thought about the work in connection to like AI generated software, because I think it's interesting that you're creating the structures that you just showed us, but then sort of mentally, conceptually, you're envisioning these things sort of becoming of their own, and that just sort of brings to mind the idea of like AI and that sort of use of technology. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I have, and structure obviously is very important to me. It always has been, and I just love the idea of creating sort of amazing looking structures. And from time to time, I will take an image like the one you're seeing here, for instance, and then attempt to make a three-dimensional object from that image, not necessarily trying to duplicate it exactly, but create another three-dimensional object inspired by the photo image, manipulated image, and then photograph that again and continue the process. So in that way, the original object continues to evolve into new things over and over again.
And Michael, can you tell everyone a little bit about, I've had the pleasure of seeing some of your things, the chair that you made where you then, made it bigger and it keeps going, kind of like these images. Can you just let people know a little bit more about your work and how it all ties in together?
Well, as I said, the photo work that I am doing now started originally by photographing my three-dimensional objects, just to document them. And at some point early on, I started to see that the photos became important and interesting on their own. And so that's how the photo work evolved from there. But I'm an artist, consider myself an artist. I'm not an architect, but I've gotten a lot of recognition as an architect, even though I'm not. One of the projects that I did called the M House, it's been published all over the world, and was a big model of it was exhibited in the Museum of Modern Art 2008. And it was a very large structure that I built in California, made of steel and concrete. And it was also designed in a similar way as a system of a kit of parts that could be put together in many, many different ways. And in that particular case, the parts could also be manipulated so that the shape of the structure could actually be changed and become a different shape for different functional reasons and also aesthetic reasons. But again, it was like most of the work, a system that could be many different things. And so I've been playing with that for many years, whether it's an architectural project or sculpture, or in this case, image manipulation. So the work has gotten a lot of attention over the years, been published an awful lot. And but from the very beginning, my only interest as an artist was to try to innovate as much as possible, and to try to reinvent everything that I came into contact with. One of my heroes in my career is Buckminster Fuller, who I knew personally and admired him greatly, not necessarily for his artifacts that he created, but the fact that he, in everything that he encountered, tried to reinvent and come up with new things, new ideas about whatever it was. So he sort of inspired me over 50 years now of working.
That's great to hear where the inspiration comes from, and we appreciate it. And we need inventors. We need to change so much in our world, that's for sure. So, well, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you. I just mentioned this. The other big emphasis from day one with me has been creating my architectural work in a environmentally friendly way. Created some of the first solar houses actually in the country, and most of my work looks at sustainability and thinking about new ways of creating eco-friendly architecture.
Thank you, and keep going and doing. And Joseph and others have things, but we need to move on. We're gonna save everything in the chat. Joseph, thank you for all of your comments. We're gonna shift on. We have Cassandra Class next, and we're very happy to have her. She's a fine art photographer and curator based in New England. She uses storytelling and photography to explore the unexplainable. Her interest in science fiction, belief, and historical archives archives guide her. I've paused here. And historical archives guide her articulation of how images can discern the multifaceted ways in which we unpack traumas, believe in what we cannot see, and examine hope in our culture. Her work has been published in Time, National Geographic, Wired, The Atlantic, and the Smithsonian Magazine, among others. She's a 2020 MFA graduate of Duke University's Experimental and Documentary Arts program. That's pretty cool. Cassandra, we're going to begin with your beautiful work here. Welcome, Cassandra. Please explain to everyone this magical project you have.
Thank you, Debbie. I want everyone to envision living as an astronaut for a second. You have a long trip ahead of you, maybe. You might be spending a lot of time in space. You're living in a confined space with people you may or may not get along with. Your diet consists of freeze-dried foods and anything green that you can grow for yourself. And you won't be able to go outside very often, except when you are wearing a spacesuit. I haven't talked about this project as much since the pandemic started. And maybe we all relate to confined spaces a little bit more than we would have before the pandemic. But I started this project 6 years ago. It's entitled Mars on Earth, but the title may change at some point. And for me, these photographs serve as a record of a scientific role-playing experiment, one where Earth remains the playground to understanding how we will live in space and how we will live out humanity's kind of multi-planetary goals. Through this project, I have actually myself participated in a number of Mars simulation and lunar simulation sites in the United States. There are 3 current simulations that are ongoing in the United States, believe it or not. One is in Hanksville, Utah, in the Moab Desert, which a lot of these photographs have been taken from, just because I have served on 2 missions there. There is the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, which is shortened to High Seas, which is on a slope of Mauna Loa, which is on the Big Island of Hawaii. And then there is the Human Exploration Research Analog, which is at Jantzen Space Center in Houston, Texas. But there are also, other variations of analogs. Those are just the ones that have humans, participants, I guess you could say. And so when I started this project, I had just gone to one and met the people who had been a part of a mission. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to get the experience or understand what this feeling is, this claustrophobia, this limitation to loved ones, this limitation to all of the norms that I was used to, unless I participate. So I applied as an artist. The Mars Desert Research Station has an artist in residency. And so I was fortunate to get that. And so my first mission was 2 weeks within a crew of 6 of us, I believe, 6 or 7. And we simulated living on Mars. The purpose of these simulations is to produce research. They're not just a kind of a role play. Lots of them are NASA funded and funded through other universities and organizations. For one example, the Mars Desert Research Station has a Musk Observatory, which is Elon Musk donating a little bit of money to MDRS. But the purpose of them is to produce research and the topics that will help us envision and problem solve how humans will fare in space travel and eventually living in space. And this could be psychologically, between crew members, between our own mental health. This could be sustainability, how we're going to grow food in space, how we're going to live in space, to engineering. There's a lot of robotics going on about, future missions to Mars and other places. And also astrobiology, because there's a lot of comparisons and parallels to on Earth that we can study, that hopefully maybe there is another version of it on Mars or a different celestial body that we may be able to find life in that way. So I have traveled quite a bit to do this project. And so there are these simulations, and then there's also this aspect of going to events that are kind of tangentially linked. So this image, even in particular, this image was taken at the University Rover Challenge, which is a yearly event where students, college level students, will apply with their entire engineering projects. And so then they will go to the Mars Desert Research Station, which is in the Moab Desert, and they will test the actual functionality of their own rovers. Some of these, these labs and these students really have thought of it all. I saw rovers that had helicopters, and that's exactly what the most recent rover, Curiosity and Perseverance, and I forget the little helicopter's name, but that's the exact kind of science that they are using currently. So it's a very interesting kind of dive into this research that really has these applications that are current. So what about me? Why am I taking these pictures? So I have a fine arts background mostly. I think it's funny, you know, this project has been seen in a lot of documentary contexts, but I always question that because I always wonder how you can find or make a truthful rendition of a place that wants to be a fiction to begin with. So I'm always playing on that line between fact of a documentary rendition and kind of this fiction of what it's really kind of trying to play, and what these people are trying to play. And you know, as I was working on this project, I wanted to really push that and blur that line of the fact and fiction as well. And so that was really my catalyst of going to these kind of tangentially linked places that not necessarily are Mars, you know, a Mars simulation, but are really making the data of and the research possible. So if we could go to the one of the first gentlemen, he was crossing his arms.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, went the wrong way. Sorry. Yeah, I know which guy. Backman or something, right?
Yes, yeah.
Bakken, okay.
Yeah. So this is Commander Paul Bakken. He was my first commander on that first mission I mentioned. And he was an ex-Army, very strict with our schedule of what we could do. When you participate in one of these simulations, everyone has a mission or a research goal. And so you may be there to test your wristwatch functionality that you've been working on. You may be there to do some kind of astrobotany project of how you want to grow some, greens and how fast that would take and what kind of humidity and all these other factors. Or you might be collecting data about everybody else, psychologically, how is everybody feeling that day? And my job was kind of just to document the day-to-day and what people were doing and what they were feeling. And so, working with Paul, he was this really strict figure on our crew. And so I wanted to portray him in that way. He was always very strict about, what we could and couldn't do on EVA. The EVA is a fancy word, extravehicular activity, which means it's basically a spacewalk. And so I made this portrait of him, and even that was like, all right, we have other things to do on this EVA. Are you done? So this picture for me represents like the full immersion, the full simulation of being, in this kind of environment, and having that strict rule within the research parameters to do this. It wasn't just fun and games of a role play. If we can go to the next picture. Oh, sorry. The mission control picture. I thought that was the next one, but I'm wrong.
There you go.
There you go. So talking about blurring the line of fact and fiction, it was important to me to start incorporating the fact, because I had so much fiction, but I wanted to ground it and kind of explore this kind of push and pull between, wait, what am I looking at, to what am I supposed to believe versus what is really happening here. This is the actual mission control for the International Space Station. This is at Jantzen Space Center. The famous Houston, we have a problem, happened in this building. This is, if you're a space nerd like me, this photograph was taken when Peggy Whitson was on the ISS, and I think she still holds the record for the longest amount of time on the ISS. But it was important to me to see these screens and to see, the people there really, really doing the due diligence of making sure that our crew at the ISS are being taken care of. And of course, this room is open 24 hours a day. And there might be other satellite locations that are checking in on them as well. But that was really important to me to start to blur this line of like, okay, we are really doing this. Can we go to the next picture? This is John Konar. He is a participant at the Human Exploration Research Analog, which is shortened to HERA. This is at Johnson Space Center as well. It's a simulation. And the thing I really loved about this photograph was that he was engaged with what his mission was all about. Their mission was to land astronauts on a comet. Of course, the EVA doesn't really exist. This is only a spaceship simulation, so there's no landscape for anybody to go to. But he had these controls and he had this kind of pseudo video game, but real kind of video game in a way. Like, there's not really astronauts out there, and they're not actually going to, you know, be harmed in any way, but you have to take this seriously. He's actually a pilot. And so, you know, him at these controls, he was very, you know, strict about what he wanted to accomplish. And so here was another moment where it's, you know, he has real capabilities, he has real, you know, there's a real aspect to this of what he can and cannot do, and what he needs to achieve. Simultaneously, we know that the astronauts on his screen are not real people.
Cassandra, let me, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We just have a little bit more time, and I do want to give people a chance to ask questions, but
Sure.
Do you want to finish your sentence? I'm sorry, I thought we had a pause.
Let me finish up real quick.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so basically, it's, you know, if you could go one more picture and then I'll be done. This is kind of coming full circle, right? So coming back, you have your astronaut back in the field. It may or may not be the same astronaut on his screen that he's helping out. And I'll just end with this. Like, I feel like these experiments exemplify and the like malleability of between humans in place and adaptability of us to really experiment with our memories, experiment with our comfort levels, and to have this suspension of disbelief while we're trying to be serious as well. So I'll end there. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you. Go, Granville, I'm going to pass this to you.
Yeah, so first I want to just address some of the questions and stuff in the comments. But beautiful work, you know, thank you all for sharing your amazing projects with us. So Larry asked, you know, as a fine artist, did you have the freedom to work as you wish to go in the direction you were interested in, you know, as you were sort of in simulation?
Yeah, so I think there's, I've had a lot of luck in that regard where I may have an assignment from some publication, but it's all wrapped up in my interests, and they've given me a lot of freedom to kind of play again with this. And like I said, people are expecting a documentary about this, but again, it's a total fiction. But I'm playing as if, you know, it's not. So there is this push and pull again, and I've had a lot of opportunity to really play with that and be in this fine art world and in simultaneity with the more documentary or like photojournalism world as well.
Very cool. And then Joseph made a comment here, and also a pretty funny question. So he said, you know, I would love to see a simulation of life on Earth, perhaps through alien eyes. Actually, I would love to see any actual life in our society, and I'm looking forward to that occurring once again one day. An aging 60s refugee talking. All of this is, of course, kind of a documentary, journalistic, nonfiction, etc. I would love to see a crazy, bug-eyed, green-eyed Martian just peek out all of a sudden from behind a NASA console and a ghost scientist. And then, did you meet any Martians yet?
Well, it's funny you say that, and this is probably a lot of where my interest in science fiction stems from. But I've always been interested in science fiction. And in my undergraduate, I did a pseudo documentary project on a couple who had been abducted by aliens. And so that was my undergraduate thesis. And then I went straight into this project. So it's not uncommon that I've been thinking about, the little green alien. Does it exist in this project? I don't think so, but it's still in my conscience of like this realm and this world, and what we will really find if we ever make it to Mars or some other celestial body. So yeah,
one of the things that one of the things that I really liked about this project, and when Granville and I were looking at it, because obviously our theme is from fact to fiction, and we knew nothing about your work, and that there was even an actual simulation that you can do for 2 weeks. And we thought that there was like, wow, look at all these things that she did and put together. And you and I were talking about earlier, if I can find, even just some of the bits, like even this piece, it was kind of like, everybody has a different kind of backpack on, even though the suits are similar. This one and more than the others, but like, why are they just using regular shovels? And everything. We were like, how did she do this? Look at these cool things that, she went and she bought this suit, she set this up, and making it so nonfiction like in this fictional story. And then the idea of the hand tools for like a video game. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I had gone to an observatory, and I found that's exactly what they use. And you then said, yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long journey. I've worked on this project for a long time. And it is like a labor of love of, I don't want to just go to one mission or on one mission and then call it quits. There's so many different variations of people who participate in these missions. It's not just the top pilots, like fighter pilots, or the top engineers. That might be what NASA is doing right now in their astronaut criteria, but these simulations are really open to a lot of different, like a variety of people from every walk of life and from every discipline. And so it's always been important to me to try and incorporate this range of experiences and this range of places, just as we would, in street photography, or documenting a place. Sometimes you stay in one place, but many times you want to see a bigger picture of what you're.
Thank you for showing us the bigger picture. It really is exposing us to so much. Thank you. Thank all of you very much. I know we're rounding at the 7 o'clock hour. Granville, is there something that you would like to contribute?
Yeah. So again, I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to submit your work and your projects. Again, being vulnerable and open to share your work with us. And I just wanted to sort of state about the selection of these 4 artists. It was really difficult as any sort of during process, but I found like a really nice sort of thread that was woven throughout all of their work as a cohesive collection. Just thinking about Abby's work, again, sort of starting with the inside, the internal mind and how we journey through that, and then Larry sort of takes us outside in the more external, as he described it, the sociological. So we're really sort of being pulled out to look at the entire sort of sphere of society, right? And then Michael is sort of taking us back into this otherworldly, strange, almost digital, I think someone had mentioned in the comments, like video game-esque world. And then Cassandra is bringing us to, different celestial bodies, even though we're still presently here on Earth. Which then in some ways sort of ties back into Abby in terms of like, the psychological aspects that astronauts have to experience and go through, and the journeys that they take in their minds, having to be separated from their family, their loved ones, food and water that's so readily available. So I think it's just really interesting how, though they're all working in very, very different ways, that it's still all very much connected, of course, through the theme of between fact and fiction, but also in all these really subtle ways as well. So yeah, just want to say thank you, and really looking forward to seeing what y'all create in the future.
Exactly. To see where it goes next. And there's, if you'd like to donate, I know Lexi put in a donate, if you want to just to donate because you want to donate so we can keep doing this, or you want to donate and then be entered in getting one of the prints. We appreciate everything that you do. We appreciate you being here, because it would be silly if we were just doing this and nobody was there. So thank you all so very much. We will be announcing, or we'll be reaching out to the winners as soon as we have that information. Alexi, am I missing anything? Is there anything else that needs to be said? We're good.
We hope you join us next month for our forum panel discussion. And also, Debbie, if you want to stop sharing your screen so we can see everyone as we part ways. There we go.
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you,
Very
everybody,
good.
for being here tonight. Great job.
Thank you, guys.
For presenters.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes, you guys did a super job, and we'll save the chat. God willing, I can figure that out. And we appreciate everything you guys did. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks again for being here. Ciao, everybody.
Thanks so much for
Be
your
well.
time and
Be
energy.
safe. Stay safe.